Good morning and welcome to On the Record with Buddy Cianci. This morning my guest is someone, if you have lived in Rhode Island for a while and you don't know this guy, then you must be living under a cave or in a cave or under a rock. He holds many titles. Number one, he's, I believe, a parliamentarian to the state legislature, number one. Number two, he is he's head president of the very important, and I think, if you like Rhode Island, of the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame. And that's an organization that he's going to tell us something about. And they're looking to get a building at Cole State Park, which is a old dairy barn, to place all this memorabilia and this wonderful artifacts of the state of Rhode Island. And we're going to talk about that tonight, or today, this morning, and also talk about other things about the state of Rhode Island. There's no better historian of the state of Rhode Island than Patrick Conley. So, Dr. Conley, thank you for being here.
Mayor, wonderful to be here.
Thank you very much. Let's first get into the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame. You've been kind of holding that organization with a great board of directors and all that for years. I want to talk about it because we never talk about things positive in the state. We're always talking about things in the show like trucking tolls, and we're 46th in that and 45th in that. But we have a great heritage, and you've been a great part of the quest to preserve that heritage and also to talk about the good things that happen in Rhode Island. So what is the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame? People may not know what it is.
Well, that's what the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame is all about. It accentuates the positive about our state. It was founded back in 1965 by Frank Lanning, who was a Providence Journal reporter. And it was he a
sports guy?
He was a sports guy and a cartoonist, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, cartoonist, that's right.
And what he attempted to do was to honor Rhode Islanders who have contributed to the state, who have achieved in such a way as to become famous statewide, nationally, or internationally, and who have operated in a number of areas, economics and politics and literature and art and entertainment and sports. So it's a comprehensive organization that honors Rhode Islanders for their achievements.
And every year you take you have a board of directors and people, and they actually vote to put people who are living in that Hall of Fame.
That's right.
And you also have a historic Hall of Fame of people who have passed on but have made contributions but maybe have not been recognized.
That's correct. I have a 25-member board consisting of a whole wide range of people. We've got generals on the board, and lawyers, and businessmen, and educators, even an Indian chief, Wilfred Green of the Seekonk Wampanoag. So we've got a fantastically diverse board, and each year they elect 9 individuals, living individuals, into the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame. We'll be voting, as a matter of fact, in November for the 2016 inductees. But when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1995, being a historian, I looked at the membership and I said there are a number of individuals from the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries that are certainly worthy of this distinction and recognition. The people should know the contributions that these individuals have made, not only to the state but to the nation. And so we created a Historians Committee, and this is the 19th year we've done this historical convocation. We'll be doing it on November the 22nd, and we started in the 17th century with Maya Antonomy, Canonicus, King Philip, Massasoit.
Is Roger Williams a member?
Oh, he was. They knew about Roger Williams in 1965. Right. He was a charter member, but they didn't know about a lot of the other people of historical merit. And so we've been inducting them. We went from the 17th, 18th, 19th, and into the 20th century.
Now you're into the 20th
yeah,
now,
we're
right?
1920 to 1940 now, with the 11 individuals that we'll be inducting next
November
month.
22nd.
That's November 22nd.
And a few of them have been people like, I know you wrote me a letter because you wanted me to be act in his place to accept the award for the late Judge Luigi Di Pasquale, who's a long-term district court judge. He was a leader in the Italian-American community, a state legislator, Democratic Party chairman. He's going to be inducted. And Wilfred Duffany, who is a native of Central Falls, who became a noted portrait artist. You're inducting, here's one that a lot of Rhode Islanders don't know, John Red Pollitt, who was a longtime Pawtucket resident, who rode Seabiscuit 18 times.
Yep, he was very famous. He was featured in the movie Seabiscuit,
Rhode Islander.
Yeah,
right.
and he was the kind of individual that gave America a lift during the days of the Great Depression, and the Hall of Fame is trying to give Rhode Island a lift by accentuating the positive and honoring our distinguished achievers.
And you're also honoring Gertrude Johnson and Mary Wales, the co-founders of Johnson Wales back, I don't know when that place was founded, but it certainly is a tremendous economic force and educational opportunity for so many students in
Yeah,
Rhode
it
Island.
was founded right at the end of the first
As a
decade of the
secretarial school,
20th century,
yeah.
yeah. And they ran it for about 30 years, and then Morris Gaby, who was already in the Hall of Fame, took it over and expanded the operation, and now they're not only a major university here in Rhode Island, but they have branches in
National,
other
yeah,
states as
sure.
well. They're nationally significant.
And then you also are on, these are the people, I don't have time to do all of them, but you're honoring Mark Anthony DeWolf Howe, who was a British-born Pulitzer Prize-winning author. These are all people from Rhode Island's past. Bowen Archer, and he's a Greenwich native, who became a nationally renowned played a cornetist.
That's right.
And isn't his statue in Roger Williams Park?
Right there
with
near
the bugle.
Absolutely, right near the old bandstand. He's got when I was a little kid in South Providence, there we'd go up the railroad tracks and into Roger Williams Park, and I was always fascinated by this guy with looked like a trumpet to me at the time, and Bowen Archer, and I
Who's
of course
he? Yeah.
didn't know much about him then. I know quite a bit about him now. He headed the American Band for a while, which was another great musical enterprise that was Rhode Island. David Wallace Reeves, the founder, is a member of the Hall of Fame.
So, how do you get these nominations? I mean, these guys have been going for a long, long time. Well, the 20th century, the ones who you're up to now in the 20th century, maybe people would remember them.
Yeah.
But how did who makes how does one become a member of the Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame?
Well,
especially if you're dead.
Well, if you're dead, we rely on the historians. I have actually made most of the recommendations, but we have historians like Al Kleiberg, Paul Campbell, Don Degnan, Scott Malloy.
They're all very, very
Glenn
prominent
Laxton.
historians.
Yeah,
They're all prominent historians.
They have either been they are on the board or directors emeritus, and this historians committee analyzes the individuals basically that I present, and they come up with some nominees of their own. Jim Maruzak is also a very active member of that historians committee. And for example, Red Pollard, the jockey for Seabiscuit, was suggested by Herb Weiss of the Pawtucket Hall of Fame. And
because Paulie lived in Pawtucket.
Yeah, he did indeed.
All right, let's get into, because we only got a few minutes left for the first segment. Now, it's amazing that you've been able to, with your board, be able to carry all this on, and people have devoted time and effort, and you have a big dinner every year. But you have these artifacts, and you certainly have these proclamations and these all the things that are good about the heritage of Rhode Island. But you don't have a permanent home.
No, we don't. We have biographies of all the inductees online, but we would like to have exhibits. We'd like to have an exhibit of prominent political figures, major congressmen, major businessmen, inventors, clergymen. We have
musicians.
Musicians. We have individuals in the Hall of Fame from just about every walk of life. We'd like to do regular exhibits on these individuals. We've got no place to do it. And so I was looking around Providence. I was being helped by some individuals, notably Howard Sutton, who's in the Hall of Fame, the former president and CEO of the Journal, and we really couldn't come up with a spot. We even gave some thought to the I-195 area, the park that was going, and there's been so much controversy over that we wanted to go on the Providence waterfront. But then when the waterfront got scrapped, that was hardly a place for the Hall of Fame. So every morning for the last 25 years, my wife Gail and I, we walk in Cold State Park. And we have this magnificent building architected by Wallace Howe, built in 1917, modeled on the great barns of the Loire Valley in France.
Maybe we got pictures. If you have pictures, maybe they can, when we tape in this, maybe we don't have them, but we're going to have them and try to put them up as you speak about this.
It's magnificent. My wife kept saying, well, look at this building. It's hardly used. They put equipment in here and picnic tables. There's about 10,000 square feet of area inside. She said, this is where the Hall of Fame should be. And I said, no, it's got to be in Providence.
It's an old dairy barn of the Colt Estate down there in Bristol.
Absolutely. Abundant parking.
And Bristol is a very historic, one of the most historic cities properties in the state.
Well, phenomenal. And when I let this out in Bristol, immediately a promising proposal for Bristol, Halsey Harrisoff and Edward Stewart introduced a resolution to the Bristol Town Council to endorse the concept, and a lot of Bristolians and East Bay people have gotten behind it. But it's a Rhode Island project. That's a Rhode Island state park. This is state property.
Owned by DEM.
Yeah, owned by DEM or
and what
regulated.
have they been using it for? Say it again, what they were
Well,
using
they've
it for?
been storing equipment and picnic tables in it for the most part. The park was dedicated in 1968. So you got 47 years where that building has been underutilized. We want to take it over and remodel it inside, all with money that we would raise. No state money, no Bristol money, no public money at all. The building is ideal for not only a Hall of Fame, but we're affiliated with the Heritage Harbor Foundation that just got funded in the amount of $3.7 million, and it will be giving out
So you have
grants.
that, you have that access to that money because of the land deal you were involved with down at the Heritage Harbor.
That's right. So the Heritage Harbor Foundation would have offices there, and the Rhode Island Publication Society that we were talking about just before we went on the show. So you got 3 heritage-oriented agencies with offices there, the Hall of Fame with exhibit space, and of course we would open up that spacious area to various historical societies, heritage-oriented groups, patriotic societies, so that they would be able to come in and use that space for various events. Ample parking, 2-acre site. There's 464 acres in Cole Park.
But it's not being, but the fact is, it was an old dairy barn. It's not being used for anything today except storage of picnic tables, and there's what, 1 or 2 offices in there?
1 or 2 offices, that's
for
it,
the park police or something, which they could easily relocate or even stay there. And then you would raise all the money, as long as you got the go-ahead. So where does it stand now? Have you been in touch with DEM or the state?
Well, we've met with DEM. I've talked to several individuals, prominent state legislators. I've talked to a number of former, present members of the Hall of Fame, let's put it that way, who are interested in participating in a fundraising drive. We've got a lot of them out there on Papa Squash that are Hall of Famers, Alan Hassenfeld and Howard Sutton lived there originally, and we've got Ira Magaziner there, and
people who have the wherewithal to go.
The wherewithal, absolutely.
And
so we've got
money.
we've got a good base, and Ambassador Middendorf.
So where are you right now? These are all Rhode Islanders. These guys.
We're ready to go. The only thing that we need is approval from DEM to use, state land.
Yeah, it's a state land, and DEM happens to have it because it's Cole Park, but they're not using the building for anything, and it would be the highest and best use would be for something like this. And so you're waiting to hear from them? How long have they had this under consideration?
Not long, for only about 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like they've dragged their feet. They'll make a recommendation to the governor, and I think the governor will be the one to give the go-ahead, to give the green light.
Well, let's urge the governor, if you're watching, Governor, this is one of the projects that can be surely tied in with the tourism effort that she's interested in. Heritage Hall of Fame, what better use could you have for a building like that than to celebrate the great past of the state of Rhode Island and also the breathing, living future we have with people who you induct every year, and they have stories and they've made big contributions. Okay. Thanks very much. We'll be right back with Dr. Pat Conley, who, by the way, is the parliamentarian for the state legislature.
No. I've represented them on several times before the Supreme Court, but you have to go back 40 years before I had that intimacy.
But you had that title.
No, Elmer Cornwell was the parliamentarian, but I worked a little with Elmer. Nothing other than representing the General Assembly in a couple of major constitutional cases.
The separation of powers.
Yes, that would be one.
All right, we'll get into that when we get back. But right now, we'll be back with On the Record with Buddy Cianci and Dr. Patrick Conley right after these messages. Here we are back again on the record with Buddy Cianci, and you see, I love breaks because I can correct myself. I wasn't far wrong. I was in the right church, but the wrong pew, I guess. When I said that he was the parliamentarian, no, he's the historian laureate for the state of Rhode Island, in honor of his writing 28 books about the history of Rhode Island, and he also runs something called the Rhode Island Publication Society, which publishes all kinds of books about the history of Rhode Island.
Correct, yes.
And so that's another feather in his cap. But he is the historian laureate of the
Yes.
state of Rhode Island.
And that's
Which
honorary.
are non-paid
That's
positions. Same as
non-paid.
parliamentarian, I
It's
guess.
honorary and volunteer. believe me.
Volunteer, okay. You know, but you've also been, Patrick was a professor at Providence College for how many years?
30.
30 years, and also has a PhD and also has a law degree, and has been an integral part of the development of the city of Providence in many ways. But he's been opinionated, there's no question about that. But I wanted to talk more about the waterfront too of the city of Providence. I think that what you're doing with the Heritage Commission or Heritage Hall of Fame is magnificent, and if you didn't do it, I know who would. I mean, you have a great board, I know that, but that takes someone to devote time, effort, and devote a lot of sweat equity into that, and that's becoming. I wish you luck, and I hope you'll be able to get that Heritage Hall of Fame building project underway, because that's really something we should have in Rhode Island. But let's get into something that's more modern or more looking to the future. You happen to own a piece of property down at the Port of Providence. Well, I don't know if it's a Port of Providence or not, but it certainly is on the waterfront.
On the waterfront, yeah.
And you and I, let's be honest, you worked in my administration, very integral part of it, and we always had dreams of redeveloping the waterfront in the city. And we did a thing called Three Cities program, where one of the three cities was the port. And there's a lot of acreage down there. And the area north of Thurbers Avenue isn't really a port. You drive into the city of Providence and you see the hospital area to the left on 95, and to the right, you come in, you see the beautiful skyline in front of you, and then you look to the right and you see nothing more than scrap metal yards and areas that I'm sure you can tell us about what it produces for the city of Providence tax-wise and job-wise, and what's the future of it. You own a building there, I know that, so we've got to disclaim that. But it still is ugly, and it still is something that really should be corrected. What do you foresee down there, and what's going on there, and how did it ever get that way?
Well, here's the story. I acquired the building on the corner of Public Street and Allen's Avenue, and rehabbed it and placed it on the National Register of Historic Places in 2006. And the idea that my wife Gail and I had was to make that building the centerpiece and the matrix, if you will, for the development of the Allen's Avenue waterfront from Thurbers Avenue north to the Hurricane Barrier. That's the area that parallels Interstate 95. It's got a deep water channel of 40 feet. It seemed ideal for hotels, a cruise ship terminal, perhaps
Mixed-use
condominiums,
development,
mixed use. And as a matter of fact, the city agreed. And so I rushed in maybe where angels fear to tread, because they spent about $1.25 million to hold hearings and to develop a plan for those 62 acres that depended upon rezoning to mixed use. Now what happened is this, and it's an outrage, and here's accentuating the negative, if you will. The city tried to rezone, and the Department of Planning approved the rezoning to mixed use. The Providence Redevelopment Agency approved it 9-0. The City Plan Commission approved it 6-1. It went to the Ordinance Committee of the City Council. Michael Solomon was the chairman. And it did that in December of 2009 and never came out. And because mixed use was not approved, the existing marine industrial zone persisted. And mixed use would have banned scrap yards. The industrial zone allowed them. And there was a business next to me, ProMet Shipyard, that was leasing land from the state on a 20-year lease that could only be broken by the city or the state. And the state, DEM as a matter of fact, put that property up for sale as surplus. It's State Pier number 1, Rhode Island's Ellis Island, where 84,000 immigrants came into Rhode Island. They put that up for sale. And because of the 20-year lease, the only bidder was the occupant.
It was ProMet, because they had the lease for 20 years.
Yeah, and you couldn't break it.
You couldn't break it, so they bought it. They bought it for cheap money, and then they resold it to another company for millions and millions of dollars of profit.
Yep.
You think the FBI should look into that?
Well, let me tell you, it was 1,138,000 state land, your land,
Yeah.
your audience's land,
Right.
1,138,000. Michael Solomon held up the zoning in the ordinance committee, and the Promet was able to flip that property to Sims Scrap Metal, the guy that puts the ones that put those big mountains over there.
Mountains of scrap metal.
Yeah, I call Mount Solomon and Yurden's Peak, I call them. Yurden was the vice chairman of the ordinance committee. And they flipped it for $12,608,000 in the middle of the Great Recession, an $11.5 million profit over a period of 1 year, and nobody investigates. Now, if that had happened in your administration, they would have brought the FBI in
CIA,
from the
the
Rocky
Navy,
Mountains. Absolutely.
Navy SEALs, everybody,
Right
yeah.
from the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah,
They would have
right.
descended on Providence. I've gone to the U.S. Attorney. I've asked the FBI. They turned a blind eye. I can't, just because Sims is powerful, they seem to get away with everything, even at that level. So I'm sure there was some kind of irregularity associated with that deal, because it's doomed the waterfront, because Sims came in and all of the other businesses that were on that waterfront shut down, and Cumberland Farms even demolished their warehouses because they knew there was no chance of development of that
With
waterfront.
all those scrap metal yards down there. So,
Yeah.
so how many businesses did the city lose as a result of Simmons Corporation being there?
Well, they shut me down. They shut Rhode Island State Pier Properties down. We were bringing in cruise ships. We had 27 cruise ship visits a year from American Cruise Lines. No more, no mas.
Yeah.
The ferry, the Providence Newport
would go to
ferry,
Newport, yeah.
shut down. All of the cultural programs, the Puerto Rican
Did
Festival,
National
the
Grid,
Brown,
yeah.
the Brown concerts, all of that shut down. So we were out of business. There was a limousine service that went out of business up the road. Verizon had an area there that they occupied.
Abandoned it.
They abandoned it. So the whole waterfront has been abandoned to
And
scrap.
I want to ask you a question. As a result of this deal that apparently was made, where Promet was able to sell the land and make $11.5 million profit to Sims,
Yeah.
because the Promet had a 20-year lease, and the state decided to put it up, and the city decided to put it up for sale. The only people who could bid on it or would logically pay to buy it for $1 million was Promet.
Yeah.
And then they flipped it for $12 million or $13 million, whatever it was.
Yeah, 12608.
Yeah, and now there's Sims there, and all these other businesses move out.
Yeah.
This is when you're driving in, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Port of Providence, as they say. It isn't really the port, but it's north of Thurbers Avenue. You see the hospitals on the left, the city, skyline on the right, and then you see what should be, if Pat Conley and others and I had my way, there would be hotels, there'd be marinas, there'd be cruise ships, there'd be all that stuff, and you could still have a tremendous working port. How many jobs, I want to ask you a question. Now, this great move that the city council and the city of Providence made, I want to know how many jobs they created. You'd say, well, if they created hundreds of jobs, maybe you could have some justification. Besides the fact that there's fires there all the time, it's a fence. It's a fence for people who rob weather vanes and copper off houses. They go down, they just get money, and it's a fence because and then when the pile gets big, they put all that stuff on a boat and send it to Japan or someplace. It comes back as a Subaru.
Yep.
And then
Or to
how
China,
many
it'll come
jobs?
back as
Or
missiles.
China and comes back as missiles. Yeah. How many jobs you could justify if there were jobs? How many jobs are in Sims Corporation on that piece of 62 acres? There's 62. How many jobs there?
Well, they don't occupy the whole 62
Yeah, but
acres.
of that whole thing.
But they're about the only viable business there other than Sprague.
Yeah.
And I have a federal court case against them for the damage that their operations have done to my building. And we deposed the general manager of Sims. And we said, how many
Jobs.
full-time employees do you have? He said 5.
5 full-time employees on almost 60. Well, how
yeah.
many acres does Sims
Well,
occupy?
Sims has about 12 acres, but they've driven everybody else off the waterfront. And that was the big thing. See, the Promet people hired public relations people, they hired lobbyists, they hired lawyers, and the big thing was don't go to mixed-use zoning because we need jobs. We were the highest
Unemployment,
we
yeah.
had the worst unemployment record in the nation at the time. Jobs, that was the whole thing. A mixed use is going to cost jobs. That was preposterous, but they sold that, and they sold it probably literally. And 5 jobs at
tough
Sims.
accusation.
Yeah, 5 jobs at Sims. If you had developed that waterfront, you'd have 2,000 or 3,000 jobs, and those 62,
And more tax revenue.
Those 62, precisely, the 62 acres generate about $600,000 worth of tax revenue for the city of Providence. If that waterfront had developed along the lines that we
Would have been
envisioned,
millions.
15 to 18 million
All right.
into the tax base, keeping the property tax rate down for the other people
That's
in
your
Providence.
government at work in the city
Absolutely.
of Providence, making all the wrong choices and wrong decisions. And that's why when you come into Providence and you're coming home or you're just visiting and you come down Route 95, you're going north, you look to the right and you see those scrap metal yards, and there you go. Dr. Conley is alleging that it could never have happened, but it did happen. And it just provides 5 jobs, and they flipped the property for $11 million profit, and who knows who got paid what.
Yep.
All right.
The Extrapolation Trail is what
Exactly.
Allen's Avenue has
All
become.
right. Thanks very much for being with us. And of course, I originally brought you on the show to talk about Rhode Island Heritage Hall of Fame, but
Yes.
since it went into this, fine, because that's shows you that you're very active too in the future of the state of Rhode Island. But where does that stand now? Can we look forward to anything with the?
On the waterfront, well, I
Quickly,
don't.
you've got 10 seconds.
Well, I don't think so. Not in my
All right.
lifetime.
All right, not in your lifetime. It's too bad. Maybe we'll look into it more. All right, thanks very much for watching 6 News on the Record with Buddy Cianci. Stay tuned for more great programming on your ABC or your ABC affiliate for Southern New England Channel 6. Have a great afternoon.